Hey guys, before we get into the video today, I want to announce our Black Friday Cyber Monday sale, which will be running through the end of the weekend. Click on the link in the description and you can get 35% off for life on subscriptions at the premium and basic plan over at CrushLivePoker.com. Matt W. up next. Hello, Matt.
Hey there, how's it going, Bart?
Pretty good. Get a hand for us, Matt.
Yeah, so we're at TCH Dallas.
TCH.
It is.
Oh, our buddy JD, right?
Yeah, JD's the best.
JD, who is in, because you emailed this hand in and you said, is this a 5100, right? TCH
5100, no limit, yeah, and we're just five-handed. It's basically like 5 in the morning, super late after a live stream.
Did you play on the live stream, or you
played on the live stream?
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah. What do you remember the date of this?
This would have been, I can tell you in a second, but it would have been like, it was last month. It was it would have been, let me just look.
They probably don't run many 5100 games that much on that stream.
No,
right?
And I think it was, we were playing 2550 with 100 on, and then after the game we just after the game that continued, and then as we got shorthanded, we just made it a 5100 because it was easier than having 3.
Yeah, I haven't really followed TCH, the Austin or the Dallas stream since Hustler and stuff like that, but it kind of tends to have, and then of course the Lodge too, because I don't know if they've upgraded their camera equipment. I mean, I know they get far less viewers than they did at their heyday when they were the first ones back.
Yeah,
from
COVID. They've updated. They have like mics that you put on now, and this was October 18th for the record.
That's funny. That's funny you say that, because when I told the owner of TCH, when I went in there before COVID in January of 2020, and he was telling me, yeah, we had these people come in and like they say these boom audios are going to be great. And I'm like, the boom audio is not going to pick up any audio. If you want real audio, you need to lav the players. 2 years later, they finally got lav mics. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have a little button. You can mute it when you walk away.
Okay. All right. So 5100 5-handed. And how deep are you?
46K. I'm the effective stack at 46K.
Now, are you a recreational player?
I am, yes, by and large recreational. I played for a few years a long time ago, but with the backing of an investor, and I'm like I run like a tech company now.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay.
So pre-flop, I'm effective sex 46K. I'm in the cutoff with Ace of Spades, King of Diamonds.
So is that like second to act then?
Second act.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to say second to act with Ace Spade and King Diamond. Okay.
And I opened a 300, which was standard. Nobody was messing with the $50 chips.
So
or
Hero
the quarter chips.
In cutoff, second to act, Ace King, but so it's just straight 5100 right now, right?
5100, yep.
Okay.
And I opened a 300. And
it's shorthanded, so this is different. I was going to say one thing of note. One of the things I always say about these Texas games, when you have these multiple straddles, but this is different. It's just four-handed with 2 blinds, but people tend to go overboard when you have multiple straddles and they open on the button when they're first to act, like 8-handed, and like you can't really open a button range. You've got 7, but this is 4-handed, so you're just lopping
5-handed.
5-handed,
right?
Yep. But I mean, whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, you got Ace King, thing. So 300.
Yep.
Okay,
yep. Opened to 3, which was nobody was opening to anything but 3.
Yeah.
It button folds. Villain, who's in the small blind, raises to 1.5K.
So he raises to 5x. You guys are really, I mean, you're 460 BBs deep for real, right? Yeah.
Yep. And he's been like, been a big loser that night. He literally has bricks of cash in his jacket. He like left to go get it. He must have had 100K in cash in his pockets in cash.
Is he like tilting a little bit?
He's tilting a little bit, and he's been calling. I've just noticed him call like huge bets really wide under, like just check call huge bets all night, and he's kind of steamy, and he's just essentially seems tilted, trying to get even kind of thing.
Okay.
And he's been punishing my my opens, from the blinds, like pretty wide. He's been playing back a lot at me. And so like when I pick up this hand, I'm like, okay, he's for sure going to raise. There's a pretty high chance of him raising. If he does, I'll re-raise.
So he 3-bets at 1500. I assume the big blind gets out of the way?
Big blind folds, and it's back to me.
Okay.
And just kind of as planned, I go ahead and 4-bet to kind of punish. I haven't 4-bet him kind of at all here. So I raise to 4,000, and he comes along.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be doing a lot of 4-betting in this scenario, right? I mean, this is not 9-handed under the gun versus UTG1, where you might have a lot of calls here with Ace King off, right?
Yep.
Especially with this sort of backstory. So you go to 4,000 for value, and he calls.
And he calls. Yep.
Okay, so we're looking at a pot of 8,000 and change, 8,100, something
Yep.
like that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Essentially, and I fully expect him to check call every flop. Essentially, like that's what
Really?
he's been check calling a ton.
Okay.
So we get a pretty good flop. King of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs.
King of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs. So just let me ask you a question, Matt. When you say he's gonna over defend, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's like super sticky. Doesn't.
So I'll ask you 2 questions about that.
Okay.
So I would assume that if the board came out like 8 deuce deuce, that you would look at ace king as like almost like a value bet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What if it came out though like queen 8-9 or queen 7-8 or something like that?
Yeah, I probably like I have no problem checking behind. I might bet like quarter pot or something like that just to.
Yeah, it's one of these things where, like, again, like in a 4-bet pot, usually like the frequency of c-bet volume, like the frequency is very, very high on all but the sort of wettest types of boards. But I was just wondering because obviously like, on a paired board, it's great, like a ragged paired board. But here, king of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs, okay?
And against him, I don't really want to be checking back a lot of flops after a 4-bet. Like I just don't have a reason to. He's super wide. There's a chance he finds a fold of like, I don't know. He's yeah, I don't know. Maybe he folds a better hand, like 6s or something. I don't know. But
so king of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs. You don't have a club in your hand. I'm assuming that from the backstory, you probably think he's almost always going to put in an extra bet in with aces or kings, right? And of course, the chances of he has kings are way down because you have a king in your hand. So maybe once in a while he's got 10s and.
Yeah, and I think there's a chance he called pretty quickly. I think there's even a chance that he might have back raised with queens or something like. So like
5-bet. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So he checks as kind of expected, and I'm kind of he can have lots of like 7-8s, 8-9s, all broadways. He has like this is a very kind of drawy board. For him.
I would probably take a larger sizing then, like 6,000 or something like that.
Yeah, I bet 5.5.
Okay, yeah.
And so, he without like he thinks for a little bit, but like less than a minute, and he check raises to 16,000.
So, small blind check raises to 16,000. Yeah, I mean, for the reasons that we just discussed going through where, sure, like once, he's going to have 6s sometimes, maybe a sliver of 10, something like that. And obviously he can have some king 10 here, but it's a 4-bet pot and you have top pair. I just find it you're going to have to play a huge pot here, but you knew that, right? 4-betting and probably flopping top pair, right? I don't think that you would want to bet here and then ever consider folding. The way that I would look at this hand is if I was going to bet and I was just taking for straight sizing and I was against somebody that was capable of sort of spazzing, you might take this line and you could have 2 sort of courses. You could be taking this line for max value against a guy that calls down far too much, but's not aggressive, with a plan of actually sort of robustly bet folding your hand at some point. And then you could take a plan of betting and then sort of letting the guy kind of hang himself and your hand's too strong to fold. Where you wouldn't want to take this sizing or sometimes not bet would be a situation where you didn't want to continue or you didn't know what you wanted to do, like whether it was a square, just easy bet fold against a straightforward guy who never bluffs, or an easy call. You sometimes will take a hand that you don't really want to bet fold that's kind of in between and check it back. We think about that sometimes in single raise pots a little bit. Of course, I'm usually an advocate of not doing that as an exploit in live games. So that's how I would sort of approach this spot. But it seems to me like you're not concerned really, right?
Well, when he check raises, I'm pretty concerned, and I can't call, so it's like fold or jam essentially because the sizes are such that like if I just call the 16, I still don't know where I'm at.
Well, here's the thing. So that's the other interesting thing about this too. Part of the other, it's nice to have a high stakes call here too, but I think a lot of times people will they lose track of pot size when they get into pressure situations like this too, because I always try to bring it back and kind of try to calm myself down and start to do some math, right? So if you call the check raise, the pot will be 32,000 and you guys have put in 20 already. So, the pot will be 40,000 and you've put in 20 already. So it will be 40,000 and you'll have 26 left if I'm doing this. If I'm doing this, let's see here.
Yeah,
Maybe,
right.
26 left. So 40,000, 26 left. So I think you're not necessarily at a case right now where you have to 4-bet. It's not like you have 15,000 left in the pot's 40 where it's just kind of pointless, right? But so I could see calling here and leaving more than half a pot size bet left and probably just going with
and just fold to a jam on the turn.
No, I wouldn't fold to a jam on the turn. No, I would call a lot of blanks. The only cards that I'm going to fold to would probably be interior clubs, meaning like if he jammed on the 9 of clubs, the jack of clubs, or the queen of clubs, you might consider folding. Yeah, man, even if it's like the 7 or the 8 or the 8 of clubs, it gets a little bit sort of dicey. But no, I'm planning on calling. But it just might be more efficient. Yeah, it might be more efficient for you to call because let's just happen to say he has air or something like that, or he has queen jack, right? And you jam over the top of him and he just decides to fold. But if you call, he somehow thinks like you're on a flush draw, so you give him some rope to hang himself on the turn.
Yeah.
So it's either jam now or just go call on most turn cards. Those are the options,
And all of his draws, I mean, to defend your line there, all of his like combo draws or flush draws, straight draws, he's coming. He didn't bet. He's planning to bet call jam. I would assume he's not going to fold like the 7-8 if he's check raised there. Maybe he does, but
well, I mean, the counter argument to my argument would be if he's structuring where he doesn't really have, if he doesn't have any check raise folds here, and you just want to go with it, then you just go with it. If he has some check raise folds, with some sort of light draws, quote unquote, and you think that you can sort of get him to barrel off, that's the thinking of going call instead of sort of going back over the top all in. I think it's probably pretty close because like at what stack depth, like let's say the pot's 40. What if you had 30 behind instead of 26?
Right. Yeah.
What if you had one pot size bet? What if you had 40 behind?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I look at it like right around
it's not
the half.
that far off.
Yeah. So what did you do? You 4-bet all in?
So I like tank.
Or you 3-bet all in?
I tank jam, and he calls. The turn's a 6 of hearts.
So before you tell us the result, so the turn's a 6 of hearts. So if you, again, it's king of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of clubs.
Yep.
Obviously, and then maybe once in a great, well, it's just hard for me. I mean, he can have some 10x of clubs here too. So an offsuit 10 might not be the best card, but I still kind of, man.
He could have ace 10 of clubs. He basically have all broadways, and like I guess this is one.
But I mean,
question.
the red six, I would 100% call. That's got to be one of the best cards. The best cards for you in the deck, right?
Yeah, red deuce 6. Maybe a little better, but yeah, red 6 wouldn't have been that bad. And he's, I guess one concern potentially is like, let's say I do call the flop, and the turn comes exactly as it was. So I've just called. He's in a, if he has if he has quads, if he has pocket 10s, or he has some straight draw, if he has like nutted hands, he's probably still going to continue. I guess he maybe continues either way. The real problem for me is if that comes like a deuce of clubs, right? So it brings in the club, and he's sitting with queen jack offsuit, no clubs.
Well, that's why. I would still probably call on those low
deuce
clubs.
Club? You're saying the interior club, you wouldn't,
I actually
the low
think,
clubs, you still come.
How about this? I actually think that this is, let's say you called, right?
Okay.
And now he checked the turn. I guess you just have to go with it if he's trapping you. There's some so there are some times when the board pairs and somebody checks and they could just be roping you in with a boat. It gets a little bit weird, but usually when you only have a half pot size bet left, you just have to shovel it in. Like if the turn's a 10, let's say that like the turn's a 10 and we think that some of his range, like you called with 26K behind, the pot's 40 and the turn's a 10, we think some of his range is 10x of clubs or like king 10 and he might be boated up. But if he checks to you, I think you probably just still have to kind of go with it. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. So,
well, and it's a big pot. And I guess like here's what I was thinking on the flop. So I end up tanking, and my concern is that I look super strong. I can have aces. I can have kings. I can have ace king. Like he's taking a massive risk by check raising me there. And my thought was like, if he had clubs or he had a straight draw, He may just check call there. He doesn't have to check raise, right? He's supposed to check call. He's been check calling all night.
Well, then that's a reason for folding the flop, then, right?
No, totally. No, 100%.
I mean, listen. I mean, if you're telling me that, then it's a lot closer than on flop. Here's the thing to boil this down: the difference between this board and this scenario. Here's the thing: like you're just happily getting it in with aces on like a 9-4-5 two flush board, right? Because he can he probably has more of a frequency of check raising draws when you think that he's missed. But here, this obviously the board's good for you, right? A lot of people four bet with aces, kings, and ace king. So the fact that he's check raising you here, is indicative of strength. So maybe it is closer now that you give us that backstory. But I was just saying, if you decide to, if you're gonna continue on from the flop, how do you play it? So anyways, you jam, he snap calls, turns a 6. What's the river?
River's a 4 of spades.
4 of spades. So it bricks out. So what does he have?
He has 10s, 10 of hearts, 10 of spades. So he's middle set. And it makes sense, like looking back, I'm like, all right. And I'm like, he could have also had, he could have shown up with 6s in that spot too. But I think the challenge for me is I have the king. I'm also not holding any clubs. So I'm like, he has more flush draws in. He's playing lots of hands. I think for me, it's going back to that. The pot is massive. He does not have to check raise to get there. And I think also my sizing I don't know, just doing a retro on this, I'm like, I could have not gone as big. And then even on the flop, if I'd bet like a quarter, he's not going to get to raise to 16. And so I'm just thinking, I don't know what your take is on this, but like, was my sizing too exploitive there? Should I just have been smaller? I could have maybe, if I bet, like, let's say instead of going to...
No, I don't think your sizing's too small. You didn't even go to 4x. I mean, I know you're in position. It's also not a cold 4-bet too. And for people... I think sometimes people have to look at this. You got to look at this as like how many SPRs there are going to the flop, right? So it's 8,100 and you've got 4,200 back. So you're at about maybe 5 pot size bets left. So, if we lopped off a couple of zeros here, and let's say that you 4-bet to say, $400, and he called and the pot was only like 8,100, or say you were playing super small, or say you're playing super small and you 4-bet to $40 and he called and you were playing say $460 and the pot was 80. Would people stack off in an $80 pot in a 4-bet pot with 460 behind? It's a 4-bet pot. You have top pair. It's it is I don't think you're crazy. I don't think it's a terrible stack off when you look at the pot size in relation. It's just one of these things where I think you make a good point that if this board isn't really being attacked all that much, I suppose you could make a case for sometimes checking back or betting smaller. It just seems like a crazy bet fold.
Well, so if we've got 8K in the pot on the flop, we have king 10-6. When he checks, I bet 2,000. Right, which is pretty standard for people to follow up with a quarter bet. And granted, it's very drawy, but whatever. We're playing 5-handed, and he has the same hand, and he raises our $2,000 bet to $8,000. Then it's like, okay, we'll call the 6, and now we're looking at a $20,000 pot.
Right, it becomes a little bit more manageable. You get to see some more cards.
He bets 12. We have a 32K pot.
And the other thing too that the other thing too is that moving back to that whole flop play, like. Probably not only with the board texture, like you said, but the fact that you took larger sizing and he's check raising means it's probably going to be either more value oriented or he's not just doing it with just random draws when you take the 5,500 as opposed to like 2K sizing too. Right?
Yeah, and I felt like ace, queen, ace, jack of clubs, he's coming, and it's like, and I want him getting it in, there. But I'm
trying to think if I put myself in the villain's perspective, what kind of check raise range do I have on this board in a 4-bet pot from out of position at this? That's my problem.
Is at this depth, there's not a lot of bluffs. He can just check call and hope, and then just hope it goes check through the turn because he calls my like C bet that might be any number of things. I might even be scared of the king, and then I might set him up for a bluff bet on the river when he misses and he's trying to rep the king or something.
The combo draw, the big combo draws like queen jack of clubs, which is it's a 15 out draw, but it blocks some of your hands that you might 5-bet with that you might fold on the flop if you're taking a C-bet like queens and jacks, and then you're left with a lot of top end stuff. So it's an interesting one. So he won a $92,000 pot, huh?
He sure did. Yeah, and I only run it once, so that was even colder. But like, what am I going to do? I'm dead anyways. But yeah, that's it. All right. Well, I want this maybe help me sleep at night. My thought was, hey, I think my takeaway, and I'm curious if we just say like moving forward, right? We're trying to just balance for this. Do you think the sizing, given those situations, given all of those considerations, is appropriate, or would you say, hey, look, maybe just size down a little bit?
The flop? You mean the flop sizing?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah.
I think that I gave Flop sort of advice based upon what you had said a little bit before, where it seemed like the guy was a little bit splashy and tilty. But if he's not overly, again, I go back to what I said, which you can listen on the flop, where I might do some more large bet folding possibly against a guy that's sticky, that's not going to bluff.
Yeah.
And then if I'm in between, then I'm probably going to take a more standard sort of small
bet call.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks, Bart. You're the best.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks.